Hello everyone, welcome back to another great session of 20th World Congress of Psychophysiology. I'm Dr. Hanshu Kai from Lanzhou University, and this is a symposium titled Computational Psychophysiology. The chair of this symposium is Professor Ben Hu and myself. As we know, emotion, mind, and behavior are fundamental to human life, influencing everyday tasks such as learning, social communication, and even rational decision making. To study human brain, mind, emotion, and behavior need to be analyzed in combination, a feat that requires advanced computational approaches. The computational psychophysiology is proposed to develop new technologies and theories that advance basic understanding of affect, cognition, behavior, and their roles in human experience. As a novel multidisciplinary science, research of affective requires integration of multiple areas such as computer science, cognitive neuroscience, neuropsychology, physiology, psychiatry, and biomedical engineering. The goal of this symposium is to gather the state-of-the-art achievements in this field and discuss the technological and scientific development in order to promote its further development. There are three different presentations in this particular symposium. Our first presenter is Professor Guangyan Liu from Southwest University of China, and his presentation title is Dynamic Functional Network Connectivity Associated with Musical Emotions Invoked by Fast Tempo. Music tempo has strong clinical maneuverability and positive emotional effect in music therapy, which can directly invoke multiple emotions and dynamic neural changes in the whole brain. However, the precise relationship between music, tempo, and its emotional effects remains unclear. The present study aims to investigate the dynamic functional network connectivity associated with emotions elicited by the music at fast tempo. And a finding indicated that fast music increasing neural activities in SM regions, increasing the intensity of the emotional experience. In contrast, slower music was associated with decreasing engagement of AUD and a weak emotional experience. Overall, these findings suggested that the time-varying aspects of functional connectivity can help to uncover the dynamic neural substance of tempo-invoked emotion while listening to the music. And then let's welcome Professor Guangyan Liu.
Hello everyone, I am Liu Ying from Southwestern University. I am a Chinese post-PhD cooperated with Professor Liu Guangyuan to study the neural characteristics of music emotion. Today, I'm very happy to be here to share our recent research. Dynamic functional network connectivity associated with music emotions evoked by fast tempo. Actually, this is an important part of our serious studies into the neural mechanisms of music in human beings. In previous study, we explored distinct neural entrainments to beat and meter, which is revealed by EEG and fMRI. This study is about brain mechanisms related to the basic acoustic properties of music. Besides, we explore the effects of music tempo on musicians and non-musicians' emotional experience when listening to music. We also did research to clarify the neural activation of different music styles during emotion invoking. And these are the recent research. The reason why we pay so much attention to the music emotion is that today, music has become an indispensable and important life accomplice for most of us. It can regulate our emotion, enhance our cognitive process, vocal expression, and motor ability. Music is also an important stimulus for promoting interpersonal communication and strengthening our faith in the when we come with some disasters. What's more, music tempo, the speed of music, has strong kinetic values and positive emotional effects in music therapy. It can directly evoke listeners' multiple emotions and dynamic neural changes in the whole brain. For the classification of music tempo, different research has different characters, but the researchers in both the psychology or music usually use the heart rate as a reference. What is faster than the heart rate is often called fast music. It's usually over 100 beats per minute. And what is lower than the heart rate is often called slow music, usually under 17 beats per minute. Generally, we saw that fast music can evoke positive emotion like happiness, excitement. These emotions were usually associated with strong neural activation in the superior temporal gyrus and cerebromotor networks. Meanwhile, slow music was usually regarded to evoke negative emotion like sadness and depression, which significant neural activation in the multi-modal network. However, the emotional effects of music tempo do not occur in a one-to-one pattern. Sometimes, fast music can evoke negative emotion, and slow music can also evoke positive emotion. This phenomenon is difficult to explain with current evidence of brain function activation alone. On the other hand, the emotion evoked by music is not constant during music. For most people, even when listening to the same tempo in one music, not only does the listener's emotion change, but their brain activation changes over time. Actually, emotional process involve the cooperative work of multifunctional neural networks in the brain. To know this, it requires the evidence of the dynamic neural functional networks to explain. So, to gain a more complete picture of the various emotion brain networks engaged when music is presented at a different tempo, we aimed to investigate the time-varying patterns of the fMRI singer in response to music of fast tempo and mid-tempo. In this research, we used the passive listening diagrams to awaken a subject's music emotion. We choose 12 piano songs that are all without lyrics and are not familiar to participants. We recruited 14 undergraduates to participate in the fMRI scanning. Meanwhile, we asked them to rate their evoked emotion valence and emotion aroused after listening to each song. After the fMRI scaling, we asked participants to repeat the emotion evaluation in the behavioral lab. By comparing the emotional difference between the scaling and after scaling, we want to know the unnecessary emotional interference caused by the fMRI environment. After all, we all know that listening to music in a fMRI machine is very susceptible to machine noise. To solve this problem, in the previous study, we also collected neural response data in the fMRI. Thanks to the noise-canceling headphones, the subjects was able to generate more or less the emotion we expected. Now look at the picture of the experiment. We put the music of fast tempo and mid tempo into the separate block. The order of the two groups were random during the experiment. Participants were asked to rate their emotional rates on a 4-point scale after each song. Each song was played for 1 minute, with participants taking a 10-second break after evaluate to avoid influence between different songs. They also took a 1-minute break between the two groups. The experiment process is a simple block design. Now let's go on the behavioral results and the brain image results. We did a one-way analysis of variance. The main effects of tempo were significant both in valence and arousal. This effect was both existing during fMRI scaling and after fMRI scaling. The results show that emotional pleasure was significantly higher in the behavior lab than in the fMRI lab. This suggests that the fMRI environment does have some emotional effect on subjects' experience. Besides, look at the right above the picture. Arousal difference was only found in mid music. This suggests that in music of mid tempo, listeners were more sensitive to the arousal of music emotion. This difference is likely due to the fact that the tempo of mid music was similar to our human body's rhythm, like our walking rhythm or heart rate. Next, we will introduce you the analysis process and the results of our functional network. First, data pre-processing is the same as other basic process, including standardization, smoothing, selecting extreme data. After all, we kept data from 36 people in the fast group and kept 38 people in the mid group. Then we did group ICA and sliding time window correlations and K-means clusters. This analysis was mainly referred to Allen's research in 2014, tracking whole brain connectivity dynamics in the resting state. We used the GIF toolbox to run all these analyses. We also reference this paper. Group ICA, the step A, can look. Group ICA mainly divides sample data with temporal information and spatial information in the group level. It is a data-driven analysis process. In the actual analysis, after obtaining the ICAs, data should be divided into several main functional networks according to the existing brain network template. In this study, 7 network modules were selected for the brain network template. In the last PPT, you can see there are 7 networks. the multi-modal network, and front parietal network, cingulate ocular network, and somatomotor network, visual network, auditory network, and cerebral network. This classification is the common method used in the current brain network research. And after this, we will do the step B. Step B was the calibration analysis of sliding time windows. Here, continuously collected brain image was divided into small windows of 3 seconds, and then the correlation between different time windows was calculated according to the correlation of the brain work in each time window. Finally, step C, clustering approach. We use the K-means clusters. Clustering is to extract the typical collection patterns of FNCs throughout the time course. If you want to know more about this method, you can really read Allen's article. It's a very good study. Here, let's go on what we found. Through the above study, we obtained 39 ICAs in the fast group and 29 ICAs in fast group and 31 ICAs in the mid group. Look at these pictures. You can see strong FNC in fast music. You can look at this averaged FNC. The strong collectivity was found in DMN, FPN, and SMN. You can see that the small metric group, the fast group, and the mid group are significantly different. We also divided ICAs into 7 networks. You can see that in the left, in these 2 groups. Then we can know the correlation about different ICAs. By further dynamic analysis, we obtain 4 cluster centers in the fast group. In fast group, we found that state 2 and state 4 accounted for more than 13%. They both accounted for 13% overall. Among them, state 2 mainly reflects the feature that the collection between CON and SMN. They also show an increasing tendency. The beta is 0.76. In state 4, we also found the participant of SMN, but this time it reflects a decreasing tendency of the collection. It's decreasing. This time, the SMN with FPN, but in state 2 is the increasing. Increasing is the SMN with the CON. In combination, it can be understood that in the process of listening to fast music, listeners' somato and emotional feeling will be gradually enhanced positively. But the function of the front air's control is gradually weakened during this process. You can also understand the front air is losing control of the brain to just let people who listen to fast music to enjoy. This confirms that fast music is more capable of arousing emotion. In middle group, we also obtained 4 cluster centers, among which state 2 accounted for the largest proportion, is about 16%. In this state, activation of the FPN, SMN, and the visual VIS increased slowly over time, and overall, the FNC the functional network of MIDI music was relatively stable over time. You can look at the absolute value of the betas. They were smaller compared with fast music. Maybe music of mid-tempo is closer to the body's rhythm, and it may not induce significant emotion swings. Moreover, combined with the behavior data, it's likely that music of mid-tempo has a weak effect on emotional play, but it maybe have a strong effect on listeners' emotional arousal. It can be further understood that in the context of the paired t-test. Let's go on. We performed the paired t-test on the two groups of fMRI data. We found 29 ICAs in these two compounds, and we found that SPL or stronger with fast music. SPL, you can look at here, it's an important L of the SMN. That means it's an important part to participate humans' sensorimotor network. And this result illustrates that the physical arousal advantage of fast music may be helpful to inductive listeners' emotion. And in picture B, we found that strong STG in middle tempo. STG is an important part of auditory network. In previous studies, some researchers found that strong STG in fast music, but now we also found strong STG in slower in middle music, which is by a data-driven approach. So this result is different from other studies, but it also complements the emotional arousal characteristic of middle music to some extent that slower may be helpful for us to listen carefully or listen clearly. And some research has found music of mid-tempo is more helpful in the long-time driving task and long-time physical exercise. It may be an energy-saving music for our humans. So, by this compare, we can know that fast music have higher emotion. It can coupled with increasing FNC between SMN and CON, but it compared with a decreasing FNC between FPN and SMN. And music of mid-tempo evoked moderate emotion with stable FNC in the whole brain. By conducting this experiment, we did some contributions, and that by the DFNC analysis, we obtained a bigger discrimination ability and make the results more biologically significant because we can explain the emotional value by the collectivity between different brain areas. And also by compare the relationship between music emotion and music tempo. It's also helpful to explain the neural feature of music and can help our further application in like music therapy or some related study. Okay, these are the related paper about our research. And if you are interested, please feel free to contact us. Thanks for your listening. Bye.
Thank you, Professor Guangyan Liu. And our next presenter is Professor Yiqian Chen from the Chinese Academy of Science. And his presentation title is Designing and Evaluating a Scale-Driven Wearable Diagnostic Assessment System for Children with Neurodevelopment Disorders. and children's neurodevelopmental disorders are in a severe situation. The early diagnosis and the evaluation of ND will help timely intervention and control of the disease, which can greatly reduce the disease development. But how to achieve quantitative perception in a natural sense is an important issue for accurate diagnosis. A multimodal perception and natural interaction technology are feasible means to achieve objective quantification, but the existing multimodal perception and interaction have some shortcomings. In this report, Professor Chen will introduce their work on how to chase the high accuracy on single-modal perception, robustness, and cross-modal fusion, and strong collaboration on multimodal collaboration. Moreover, he will exhibit applications on awareness of social distance for ASD, assessment for mild cognitive dysfunction, and auxiliary diagnosis for ADHD.
Hello, dear listeners. Today I want to share our research on designing and evaluating a skill-driven wearable diagnostic assessment system for children with neurodevelopmental disorders. Moreover, I want to talk about quantitative diagnosis and evaluation based on multimodal interaction. Firstly, I will give the background on why we focus on dealing with children's neurodevelopmental and what are the challenges. Children's neurodevelopmental disorders are in a severe situation. In China, the incidence rate of children with autism spectrum disorder is about 1 out of 54. In terms of ADHD, it is as high as 5 to 7%, about 15 to 20 million children. With the increase of the number of newborns and the enhancement of awareness of this disease, the incidence rate and the number of children become higher and higher. Moreover, neurological disease is not self-limiting. If they are not treated, the disease will continue to adulthood. There are many unaccompanied symptoms. This will greatly affect the patient's quality of life. Therefore, the early diagnosis and evaluation of neurodevelopmental disorders will help timely intervention and control of the disease, which can make children significantly improve and greatly reduce the disease development. Recently, clinical diagnosis and evaluation methods still have a lot of problems. In terms of objective diagnosis technology, as the lack of specificity, it has not been widely used in clinical practice. The three main objective diagnosis technologies are shown as following, but some of them can cause discrepancy in the evaluation result, and some of them the specificity is not strong, and sometimes it also can come up with some false positive, which actually is caused by the nervousness. But in fact, there is a golden standard for the diagnosis of cognitive disease in the world, which is DSM-5. And the full name of it is a Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. Now it has a fifth version. DSM-5 is a standard for diagnosis of ADHD and ASD, and it defines the core symptoms of them. But DSM-5 is highly subjective and it is descriptive stance. In clinical, doctors need to combine it with expert experience and knowledge. Thus, our main concern is how to achieve quantitative perception in natural scenario, and of course, it is an important issue for accurate diagnosis. Multimodal perception and neutral interaction technology are feasible means to achieve objective quantification of the skill DSM-5. and both informatics experts and medical experts pay attention to variable and intelligent interaction technologies. Informatics experts use them to detect the sleep and behavior related to the infant's cognitive ability, and medical experts discuss the opportunities and challenges of wearable device in neurological disease and publish the result on Lancet in 2015 and 2019. This provides confidence for us to use multimodal perception and interactions to diagnose neurodevelopmental disorders. But the existing multimodal perception and interaction have some shortcomings in three aspects, including the low precision on single-mode, the weak fusion on cross-modal, and the poor synergy on multimodal. Single-modal is greatly affected by dynamic change, and the cross-modal fusion effort is not sufficient, and multimodal have a coexistence of redundancy and missing. Next, we will introduce some of our work in solving the above three problems. That is multimodal intelligent perception and interaction. The first challenge is the robustness of single-modal perception. We took gesture recognition based on skin muscle electrical signals as an example. Due to the varying position, the electrical signal will be lost sometimes, which changes the feature dimension of the input model. Currently, one related work is a feature incremental method based on the error bifurcation description constraints, which can only be adapted to the feature dimension increasing. And another related work is a learning method adapted to feature evolution, such as OPID and FESL, but they cannot adapt to the feature dynamic reduction situation. Our idea is to use a spatial constraint relationship between behavior categories and signal distribution to build a robust perception model. And the specific solution is to build an ensemble learning model based on spatial constraint weighting, namely the grouping random forest model. When the dimension of the feature is reduced, the missing features are reconstructed by matrix stat. When the dimension of the feature increased, the integrated classifier is updated by evaluating the individual classification model. For the feature dimension reducing, the missing feature is reconstructed by the closest feature, and the judging criteria is G. And the missing features can be reconstructed by pseudo-inverse. For the feature dimension increasing, learning new knowledge by reducing useless inertial internal nodes and splitting impure leaf nodes, and use a new data stream to further adjust the node threshold and the condition of the existing node threshold. The above methods have been verified on the standard public test dataset. The relevant results show that our method still maintains good gesture recognition accuracy when the features are missing by 20%. When the features are increased, our method can improve the accuracy by 5 to 10% compared with the comparison method. In addition, we also tested it in a practical application dataset, which is a gesture recognition based on an EMG armband. From the desktop experimental result, we can conclude that the accuracy of the gesture recognition improves with the increase in the number of the electrical sensors from 48% of the initial model to 90% after the fourth incremental update. And from the mobile terminal experimental result, the recognition accuracy of our method is all above 19%, which is better than any other comparison method. This work is published on MWOT, which is a flagship conference in ubiquitous computing. The second challenge is that the fusion effort of cross-modal is not sufficient. This insufficient fusion is caused by the feature redundancy and high coupling on multi-source state. Multi-modal fusion based on traditional methods such as PCA, OCSVM, deep SVDD, and so on. These methods use a two-stage framework to extract features for each type of sensor. Others are based on end-to-end fusion methods, such as MAD-GAN. These methods often deal with data from different sources equally, or simply connect and integrate multi-source data features. For this challenge, we come up with a cross-modal feature fusion methods based on multi-scale spatial-temporal consistency. The main idea is that based on the temporal correlation within a single model and the spatial correlation between different models, realize the integration of multi-scale spatial-temporal consistency. First, it uses different embedded sub-networks for feature extraction of multi-source time serial data. And secondly, cross-modal multi-scale fusion is achieved by simultaneous interpreting the correlation between sensor data, inertial time, and spatial correlation of different sensors. Thirdly, we use a convolutional LSTM based on encoding-decoding to establish a semi-supervised anomaly detection model. Here is a detailed process of multi-source data representation, learning, and multi-scale feature fusion. And this slide shows a one-class classification model based on the convolutional LSTM encoding-decoding method. Each convolutional LSTM layer converts the output of the previous layer into two state vectors, cell state and hidden state, retains the state of the last time step of each convolutional LSTM layer, and discards the output of the encoder convolutional LSTM. The state vector will be used as a condition of the decoder in the next stop. And the experimental results indicate our cross-modal multi-scale feature fusion method achieves the best performance. At the same time, the virtual analysis shows our method can reduce the coupling degree between multi-source features and find the optimal feature space. This work is published on Neurocomputing. Challenge 3 is that multi-modal have a coexistence of redundancy and missing. Specifically, in the actual perception of interaction process, there are problems such as lacking redundancy and weak correlation in multimodal interaction. Here we hold the idea that constructs collaborative data selection based on quality assessment and multimodal collaborative representation based on adaptive transfer. In the detail, for the multimodal data collaborative selection, we select a multimodal channel based on availability quality evaluation and select multimodal feature based on static variential information bottleneck. Also, we do a lot of job on multi-source data collaborative representation. We introduced a mirror of the distribution difference between different model data for the distributed adaptive transfer representation. And for domain spatial temporal adaptive transfer representation, adaptive evaluation of margin probability distribution and the conditional probability distribution. We learn spatial adaptive features and select the optimal source domain. In the following two slides, I will introduce these two solutions in detail. For multi-source data collaborative selection, one method is multimodal channel selection based on availability quality evaluation. The main idea is multimodal selection based on availability quality assessment of signal physical attributes and construct the relationship mapping between data availability, quality, and optimal model combination. Another method is multimodal feature selection based on stochastic variential information bottleneck. The main steps include constructing a multimodal feature selection method based on stochastic variential information bottleneck, using randomness to improve effective redundancy and ensure the robustness of selection, and using the information bottleneck to learn the relationship between model features. And in terms of the multi-source data collaborative representation, the main idea is to transfer adaptation on features. One way is distributed adaptive transfer representation, in which we add an alignment layer in the traditional deep learning model, and also introduce a measure of the distribution difference between different model data, and minimize the difference in Fourier distribution. Another way is domain spatial temporal adaptive transfer representation. This method needs adaptively evaluates the relative importance of margin probability distribution and conditional probability distribution, and learns the time adaptive feature by adding time factor to manifold learning, and also learn spatial adaptive features and select the best source domain. And the results show our proposed method achieve better effort on both multimodal collaborative selection and collaborative representation. You can find detailed information on two published papers on UBComp 2020 and MMM 2021. The above perception and interaction methods based on multimodal Fourier have been well applied in children-oriented cognitive impairment, auxiliary diagnosis, and rehabilitation intervention. I will introduce three typical applications below. The first application we did is an auxiliary intervention technology based on single-modal perception for children with autism. As we know, autism people have problems with social abilities. One of these disabilities is awareness of social distance. This means some autistic people may stand too close in front of a stranger or stand too far away from a close friend. Our work is an intervention system for social distance cognitive disorders people. Distance sensing based on infrared sensor, realizing graphical feedback intervention information. This system was verified on the data of more than 10 children with autism, and it was statistically significant for social distancing intervention, and was nominated for the best paper in CHI in 2017. The second application is based on cross-modal Fourier. It is an interactive dual-task cognitive assessment system for mild cognitive dysfunction. It is a touchscreen-based task including 4 subtypes or different paradigms. Through the diversified touchscreen tasks based on the dual-task paradigm, simple and efficient interactive auxiliary diagnosis is realized. In this system, we combine the feature abstracted from the task and also the finger's trajectory. The ADHD has been used for demonstration in 3 hospitals, and the accuracy of the evaluation is as high as 90.1%, and the clinical evaluation time is shortened from 30 minutes to 1 minute. And the related work is published on IGHCS and EGCAI. The third application is based on multimodal collaboration, which is an auxiliary diagnosis system for children with ADHD. It is a scenario-based, immersive interactive auxiliary diagnosis system through the touch screen, wearable device, and physical interaction device. Its role is to replace a clinical paper questionnaire and realize the objective quantification of the diagnostic skill. The current experimental results show that it can fully cover the judgment of 18 typical symptoms of ADHD in DSM-5. The system has been used in demonstration applications in 3 medical institutions, and the evaluation accuracy rate is as high as 95%. Similarly, this work can be found on CHI 2020 and BIBM 2018. Finally, let me briefly summarize today's report. Multimodal perception and interactions is a possible way on quantitative diagnosis and evaluation of children's neurodevelopmental disorder, but there is still a lot of shortcomings in the existing multimodal perception and interactions. As the robustness of single-modal perception interaction is weak, the cross-modal fusion effort is not sufficient, and the multimodal methods has a coexistence of redundancy and missing. Our work is to chasing the high accuracy on single-modal perception, robustness on cross-modal fusion, and strong collaboration on multimodal. And we also applied them on awareness of social distance for autism spectrum disorder, assessment for mild cognitive dysfunction, and auxiliary diagnosis for ADHD. Here is all my report, and thank you for your listening.
Okay, thank you, Professor Yichang Chen. And our last presenter is Professor Tingxiao Zhu from the Chinese Academy of Science. Many methods have been proposed to automatically identify the presence of mental illness, but these have mostly focused on one specific mental illness. In some non-professional scenarios, it would be more helpful to understand an individual's mental health status from all perspectives. And Professor Tingxiao Zhu's team and their research demonstrated that the fine-grained aspects of mental health can be identified from the face and provided a feasible evaluation method for multi-dimensional prediction models. And then let's welcome Professor Tingxiao Zhu.
Hello everyone, my name is Wang Xiaoyang. I'm from Institute of Psychology, Chinese Academy of Sciences. I'm very pleased to be here to join this forum. The topic of my presentation is identifying psychological symptoms based on facial movements. My presentation will include these 5 parts. First, some background information about this research. Second, the materials we used. Then, the main work we have done, and the results we obtained. And finally, discussion. So first, background. This study used facial movements to identify psychological symptoms. Why we chose facial movements? Many studies have found that the physiological and behavioral indicators of individuals with mental illnesses differ, including brain activity, galvanic skin response, eye contact, voice and facial movements, and people with different mental health disorders behave differently. Of all knowable cues related to mental health, facial experiences are relatively stable and easy to obtain, so we chose facial movements. Behavioral recognition methods have been developed to judge the existence or degree of specific mental illnesses. However, in identifying an individual's mental health status from a range of perspectives may be more helpful in non-professional settings, such as self-monitoring or large-scale monitoring. So we used symptom checklist 90 scale to obtain people's psychological symptoms. It's a simple way for research to obtain a series of quantitative indicators to comprehensively describe an individual's mental health. Consequently, we use facial prediction models based on symptom checklist 90 scale to assess the psychological symptoms of mental illnesses. Given that this is a multi-dimensional research, one model should predict the same symptomatic dimension as assessed by the corresponding subscale. Existing model evaluation methods, such as accuracy or mean square error, cannot evaluate such convergent validity. Therefore, we applied the assessment method of scales to machine learning models. That's the reliability and validity test. We used the correlation between the predicted scores from models and actual scores from scales to calculate validity, and used the correlation between predicted scores from models based on two halves of the facial data to test reliability. In sum, this study obtained facial movements and symptom checklist 90 scale scores, then built facial prediction models to identify psychological symptoms and calculated reliability and validity by way of evaluation. The second part, materials. We recruited participants at a large event in Wuhan in July 2019, most of whom were coach drivers. After balancing gender and normalizing the SL90 score distribution, 100 participants were included in the final analysis, including 16 males and 40 females. This study used SL90 to measure multiple physical and psychological symptoms. It has been widely used in the mental health assessment of various groups. Due to the limited data collection time available, we chose the 6 symptomatic dimensions of SL90, which contribute most to people's mental status and also known to affect the normal expression of individuals. Those dimensions were interpersonal sensitivity, depression, anxiety, hostility, phobic anxiety, and psychoticism. We also used Kinect to record the movements of 1,347 facial key points in three-dimensional space. Kinect is a low-cost, convenient, and reliable deep sensor with a RGB imaging camera developed by Microsoft, and we selected the points near the facial feathers and the center points of other parts as the key points for identifying mental health symptoms, which totaled 36. We can see those 36 points in this figure. To build the models, we collected and carried out a series of data processing operations. Participants were first asked to complete the demographic information questionnaire and the 6 subscales of SL90. Then they read a neutral test introducing the macro bridge, during which Kinect was used to record their facial key points locations over approximately 30 seconds. After data collection, the scores of the subscales in SL90 were calculated. For each participant's facial key point coordinate, data processing was conducted to eliminate the influence of noise. First, for each frame, we translated the origin of the key point coordinate to the position of key point 0 to balance the influence of the head movements. Then, for each frame, the average coordinates of this frame, the previous frame, and the next frame were used as the coordinates of this frame to balance the influence of noise. Next, we intercepted the data from the 100th frame to the 700th frame to eliminate the preparation time before and after reading. Finally, we conducted subtraction between the adjustance data in the time series to obtain the coordinate changes. We named the 100th to 700th frames whole data, and the odd 300 frame and even 300 frames in these 600 frames split half data, so that facial movements could be expressed as changes in the coordinates of key points. Time series characteristics were used to describe the movements of each key point. The present study used 30 time series characteristics, such as mean or standard deviation, as features to extract motion information. We extracted 30 time series characteristics for the three-dimensional coordinates of 36 key points. So we obtained 3,240 dimensional feathers. After extracting 3,240 feathers for each participant, supervised feather extraction was used to select feathers that were important for each model, which were also feathers related to the subscale scores. F values were calculated between each feather value for whole data and each dimension score. Finally, we selected 50 feathers with the largest F value for each model. Based on prior knowledge provided by other studies, the range of knowable activities is mostly linear with the degree of mental health, so the linear regression model was selected. Because too many feathers may lead to overfitting, we used L1 regularization to simplify the model. So list absolute shrinkage and selection operator was used to fit the layer relationship between feathers and subscale scores. After model training, predicted scores using whole data were defined as the predicted values for this method. The predicted scores of split half data were used as the split half scores. The split half reliability for each model was assisted with correlation coefficients between split half scores and multi-trait multi-method matrix analysis and criterion validity analyses were conducted to test validity. The whole process of data processing and model establish is shown in this figure. In this study, the original whole data was divided into two parts based on the parity of frames, and the Pearson correlation coefficient between the predicted values of the two split half data was calculated as an indicator of split half reliability. The split half reliability of 6 facial prediction models were shown in this table. We can see they are all reaching the significant level. The actual scores of each subscale were used as the effective standard, and the Pearson correlation coefficients between the predicted values of the whole data and the actual scores of the corresponding subscales were calculated so as to conduct the analysis of criterion validity. The results showed that the correlation coefficient had reached a significant level, which meant the models established had high criterion validity. This study used a multi-trait multi-method matrix to explore the structural validity of facial prediction models. 6 traits involved in the multi-trait multi-method matrix, and 2 methods were involved, including SAL90 subscales and facial prediction models. Pearson correlation coefficients were calculated among the predicted values and SAL90 subscales scores. And this table presented the zero-order correlation matrix between variables. In this table, the bound numbers on the diagonal represent the correlations between different methods measuring the same trait. The numbers in the triangles represent the correlations between different traits measured by the same method, and the numbers in the yellow area represent the correlations between different methods measuring different traits. The results indicated that in the same column, the bounded numbers were significantly larger than the data in the yellow area, except for this number, which meant that our models had good convergent validity. However, the bounded numbers were not all greater than the corresponding values in the triangles, which meant that the discriminate validity of our models was not so good. With previous research, the high criterion validity suggests that under neural conditions, facial movements can also be used to distinguish patients with mental illness from those who are healthy. Previous studies also found that individuals with some mental illnesses have fewer facial movements than healthy people due to alexithymia. An alternative explanation would be that, compared with healthy people, people with poorer mental health status are more likely to produce and express negative emotions under neural stimulation. Although each model has significant criteria validity. It is noteworthy that the depression model and the anxiety model had lower criteria validity than the other symptomatic dimensions. Based on previous studies, we speculate that this is because the comorbidity with anxiety or depression is common in people with other symptoms. In terms of reliability, results indicate good levels of split half reliability for all the models. The credible split half reliability suggests that the time series characteristics we extracted can represent stable personal traits to some extent. Our study indicates that the facial prediction models based on SAL 90 have good split half reliability, criterion validity, and convergent validity. Our research also provides a feasible method for evaluating the performance of multi-trait machine learning models. As per the literature explored and knowledge of the authors, we are the first to measure the reliability and validity of machine learning models. Furthermore, we tracked the facial movements of participants under neural stimulation, which is close to the facial state of people during normal communication. Although the current facial prediction models cannot replace skills, existing research could be combined with monitoring technology to achieve large-scale or non-invasive mental health monitoring. This study also has some limitations. First, the selection of the machine learning algorithm should ensure that it can match the corresponding dataset. Selecting deep learning algorithms may improve the results slightly, but this is not the focus of this paper. Second, as the participants in this study were conveniently sampled at a large-scale event, although age and gender were balanced, the specific occupation of the participants may also cause some simple bias. Finally, the criterion validity of the depression and anxiety models was lower compared with other models. Further research can try different data collection, scene, and feather extraction methods to better predict the psychological symptoms with many subtypes. So that's all I want to introduce. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, please contact us.
Well, thank you, Professor Ting Xiaozhu. And that will conclude our symposium, Computational Psychophysiology. And thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for listening.